All righty, we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. Sorry we're a couple minutes late. Some of us had old habits and we went upstairs to 445. I won't name any names, but it was me. We have a quorum today. Jonathan Friedman's here, Jerry Stevens here, and we also have Tyler Clancy, board member Clancy online. We will start public comment before 11 o'clock, but Diana, raise your hand. There she is. If you want to fill out the form to leave a public comment card, that would be great. All right, let's look for the minutes that were sent by Larry a couple days ago for the November 6th. Board members looking for I'm just going to turn you on, a motion and a second to that.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Thanks, Tyler.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jonathan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All righty, let's turn myself off over to Executive Director Ben Hart, whose birthday is in a few days. I knew I wasn't going to forget. It's on Thursday, everyone, if anyone wants to send him cake. He likes Coke. Coke Zero sometimes, Dr. Pepper, and sometimes Mountain Dew. So there you go. I got a few in my bag. All right, let's give you some time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's very much appreciated. Turning 29 this year. Again. Good things happening at the port. Just a couple of introductions, and then we're going to have a brief report for the Iron Springs project area. I wanted to introduce, we have had a lot of dynamics related to mapping and other qualities and requirements as we have expanded our project areas. And so, as you may recall, we lost our GIS specialist, Dane Maher, several months ago. We have just recently had Doug Pierce come into the organization. We really appreciate Doug coming to join us. He brings 30 plus years experience. I had a chance to work with Doug in a prior life when I was at Layton City. And it has been a great thing to have somebody of Doug's caliber and quality helping us with our mapping. Mapping is critical for the port. I also want to just quickly introduce Michelle Eben, who is online. Michelle is going to be spending more time with us. In fact, we're hoping that she might be here with us next month and might get to introduce herself personally to board members. I know Michelle, and we have been working together for several years. Michelle helped us get through the purchase of the landfill site. Michelle will be a much stronger presence for us here. We had to re-procure Michael Best over the late summer as their contract was coming to a close. But Michelle is the best of the best. I've worked with a lot of attorneys. We've got a great one with Brooke at the AG's office, but also just with needing to get through some very complicated real estate transactions, and also helping an organization like ours, which is really kind of not normal. We're very unique. It requires no common skill set. It's something that takes somebody very unique. And Michelle has been dynamic, helping us the last 3 years, Michelle, since I've been here. And so I just wanted to recognize Michelle Eben as well and let the board know that she'll be playing a bigger role as we get into the continued real estate, landfill, all sorts of different items. With that, we will go to Danny Stewart, and we will hear from Danny just a quick report out on the Iron Springs development.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Today, happy to give you a brief update on some of the things that are going on at the Iron Springs project area in Iron County. Let me jump ahead here. In the last couple of months, we've triggered parcels at the newly completed Nautilus 1 building in the BZI Innovation Park, and also the Hive Plastics building in the Silver Hills Business Park. We've also awarded a business incentive to Hive
Annie,
Plastics.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. Can you all see stuff on his screen, or is it just, okay, we can't see anything.
Oh, are you not seeing my screen?
No.
It says you started.
Yep, so it says started screen sharing, but it's got the scrolling circle of death.
Oh, that's not what we want to see. Let me try to re-share that. Apologize for the glitch there. Let's try this. Let's see.
There we go.
There we go.
That's good. Danny.
Oh, excellent. Very good. Okay, so just circling back here in the past couple of months, we've triggered parcels at the Nautilus 1 building in the BZI Innovation Park, and also triggered the parcels for the Hive Plastics building in the Silver Hills Business Park. We've also awarded a business incentive to Hive Plastics, which incidentally is holding its ribbon cutting ceremony this afternoon. We're looking forward to that today. Last month, we completed Amendment 2 to the project area, which added industrial properties both in Cedar City and in Parowan to those areas already in the unincorporated portions of Iron County. Let's see. The Nautilus 1 building in the BZI Innovation Park has announced its first 2 tenants so far. First is a business called Iron Depot. That's a BZI affiliate company. It's a regional welding materials and industrial supply company. The second tenant is Totten Tubes. This is a family-owned structural steel company. It announced it will be moving into this space in April this next year. Tenant improvements are now underway for 34,000 square feet of space in this building. This company has been in business for 70 years, family-owned company with headquarters in Los Angeles and 5 other locations in California, Arizona, and Washington. So this is their first foray into the Mountain West states, and we look forward to welcoming them here this spring. We're also working on a number of other projects that are considering locations in the Iron Springs project area. Finally, wanted to give you an update on the progress of the RAISE grant study that is currently underway. Back in 2021, the Inland Port Authority applied for a U.S. Department of Transportation RAISE grant for a study that is titled Planning and Optimizing a Multimodal Logistics Center in Southern Utah. This was more than a year before we created the project area in Iron Springs or any of our other project areas aside from the Northwest Quadrant. So this grant was awarded in 2022, and our team has been working closely with U.S. Department of Transportation and with the Federal Railroad Administration to follow through with this project. Earlier this year, we hired Cambridge Systematics through the RFP process. Cambridge Systematics is heading up this study, which will be completed in early summer next year. This study is looking at freight demand forecast, an infrastructure needs assessment, and an economic feasibility analysis. We're working closely with Cambridge Systematics team, collecting and analyzing data and conducting dozens of stakeholder interviews for the study. Its findings will help the Iron Springs project area along with Iron County and the southwest region of Utah as we continue to plan and implement the development of this project area. That's my update. Are there any questions from board members about my update?
I don't see any, Danny. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good work down there. It's all coming together very nicely.
It's exciting. Thank you.
All right, Ariane, let's hear from you on our quarterly budget update. What number are you on there? Okay.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to go over our fiscal year 2026 quarter 1, which is September 30th, unaudited draft financial statements. Really, the key point I want to point out here is that being a quarter way through the year, you would expect about 25% of your expenditures. If you look at the bottom line, we're at about 10% overall of our revenues or of our expenses. So we're doing really well. If you look at the revenue side of our financial statements, we've received our state appropriation, we've received some sales tax for our project areas, and we have the interest earnings on the money still sitting in the bond accounts as well as our state treasurer's account. When it comes to the scroll,
Just to the bottom.
oh, to the bottom, I apologize, right here, the 10%. And then when it comes to our operating expenses, we're doing really well, as I mentioned, with the 10%. Personnel is right in alignment. And a couple of things to note on the areas that are a little bit above where you'd anticipate. They were budgeted in a slightly different category. This is just our still continued transition from the state's accounting system. When we prepared the initial budget, we hadn't kind of finalized where those things would fall. And so as we move through the fiscal year, we'll probably bring an updated budget for the board to review on those categories. But overall, we're really doing really well when it comes to our expenses. And then here in the spring, we'll anticipate receiving property tax differential for not just the Northwest Quadrant, but a few of our other project areas that we've triggered tax differential for. Any questions, comments?
I don't see any. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
It's great. All righty. Armando. We'll have you come up and give us an update on rail opportunities. Yes, of course, Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. 10 seconds of thumbnail sketch. I just want to say a huge thank you to Armando. With the rail and logistics RFP that we put out, it was approved by the board a couple of meetings ago. We were able to contract with Broadway and also Armando. Armando is the smartest person in the state with rail knowledge, bar none. So I'm going to say that. We are excited to have him. Our hope is that as we look into the future, we're not just being responsive as we become more of a multimodal state, but we can be a little bit proactive, and just so appreciate having someone of Armando's expertise coming in and not into the organization, but helping us through vendor contract, help us out. So thanks, Armando.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you, Ben. So in the beginning of November, Director Hart and I sat down in his office and really wanted to plot out, what does rail currently look like in Utah today? And let's start mapping out what a pathway to what it could look like in the future. So for the last few weeks have definitely dug in. I've been living in the state of Utah since 2017. Initially with Union Pacific, where I led all transportation operations for Union Pacific, and then went to Savage for the last several years and have developed several projects out in the state for Savage. And so had a fairly, what I thought, decent sense of kind of what was happening in the state, investments that have been made. And through this exercise, it was really helpful to be able to just really dig down, understand, spend time with the different stakeholders. So spent time with the Shortline Railroads, spent time with Union Pacific, with BNSF, to understand kind of their needs, their direction, what would help them strategically to unlock more volume and additional capacity. And so just kind of a quick point there. So rail pricing typically is significantly cheaper than truck. There's about 4 trucks and 1 rail car. Rail moves a little bit slower than truck, sometimes can be a little bit more unpredictable in terms of the supply chain, but often cost is why people choose rail over truck. Rail costs and pricing is typically based off of capacity of a rail lane. And so as we go into kind of areas that are strategically positioned for rail, that's kind of the strategic filter we're looking at. So does that lane currently have capacity? Is it dual served, or is there something there that makes it more competitive? The other component of greenfield rail development is the cost physically of the infrastructure to connect to the rail network itself. And so think about connecting to like building a driveway on Interstate 15 versus building a driveway in a cul-de-sac. Significantly more infrastructure needed to be able to connect into that thoroughfare. So understanding the lanes themselves is also helpful. So as we guide people in the state, new businesses, those types of things, of guiding them into areas where we know that barrier to entry is going to be less. And so that's kind of the lens that we set this with, but really analyzing that throughout the state. We broke the state down into 6 different sections. We won't go through all that today, of just rail characteristics, how it operates, where it gets served from, and what makes it unique. And so just one thing that was really interesting, I'm completely honest that I did not intend this to look this way when we started this, but after doing all the analysis, essentially every project that had capacity added in the state of Utah since 2020, Inland Port Authority has been part of, which was a really kind of interesting thing to see. And so obviously through the economic tools, through AIB, through lobbying, through being advocates for growing and shippers in the state, it was fascinating to see that 100% of the new capacity projects had UIPA involvement. And so, and those really are, so as we kind of heard from Danny earlier, BZI Innovation Park, obviously they're doing great things there. You know, Savage has invested multiple different facilities over the last few years. So Translove's in Midvale, Tooele, and Cedar City. The new railroad that they built in Tooele County. And then the SLGW has done significant capacity increases to be able to handle the volume into the Northwest Quadrant. So what we really looked at is, it's kind of like I said earlier, areas positioned for growth. So really the one best position in the state currently to grow volume is Tooele County, and specifically the areas surrounding the Savage Tooele Railroad. And so that railroad investment unlocked thousands of acres of potentially rail served property to be able to locate businesses, shippers, those kind of things on at a very low barrier to entry. Since it's not main line, they're essentially just paying for the physical, manual switches versus trying to put in powered switches and those type of things that could be millions of dollars. You could essentially connect to that rail line for probably less than $500,000, which is quite a deal in our industry. The next area, and we're not going to go too far into this, it's kind of a separate analysis, really is the Northwest Quadrant. Extremely well positioned for growth, being serviced by the SLGW. There's obviously available land there between what's on the landfill and then the area west of the landfill. It's dual served. So as mentioning with capacity, when you have dual service, there's often more competition. So they're competing for better pricing. But like I said, it requires a more detailed analysis. Cedar City is another area really well positioned in the state to grow volume. BZI Innovation Park has significant land holdings there. And then north of kind of that area, there's tens of thousands of acres with rail on both sides of it that could have direct rail access. Because of where it's at, it fits the UPR standard line classification. So it's essentially the same as a short line in terms of infrastructure requirements. So they're not requiring mainline switches or anything of that nature. So the barrier to entry to add rail in that area is much less than other parts of their network. And in my opinion, really well positioned for scalable industrial development. Brigham City, if you look at kind of the Wasatch area there, probably the best positioned area outside Northwest Quadrant is the Brigham City area, specifically around the airport. You have kind of unique characteristics there where you have great highway access. So you have I-15 and 84 overlapping there. You have Union Pacific's main line, it's the Ogden subdivision, which is the only mainline subdivision on UP's network in the state of Utah that fits the standard classification. So everything else is restricted or more restricted than that area. So essentially just the same requirements as the Cedar City. So just putting a switch in. And with the airport there, air mobility, there's strong potential for more growth in that area with available land to develop out. Wellington is actually something that kind of came up through this analysis, that there's some really interesting things going on in Carbon County. Specifically around the CV spur. So off of the Union Pacific main line, which BNSF has access to throughout that entire area, there's a spur that goes south from there that currently there's a coal loadout on. Carbon County owns some of the area to the east of that, but really well positioned from a service perspective due to the dual nature there. And so we did some analysis on crude by rail, coal export, those type of things. And just given the infrastructure that they have there, you do have scalable ability to grow volume out of the CV spur and out of Carbon County. And then the last one is West Weber. Really kind of unique there. So off the lakeside sub, so just west of Ogden, there is significant acreage. It's in a port focus area currently today with direct rail access and areas ability to market that and to grow volume there for logistics, distribution, those type of things. So as we kind of talk through the areas of opportunity, the other thing that we talked about is, okay, in those specific areas of opportunity, what are things that would unlock more capacity in those project areas? And so the first one, kind of looking at the state as a whole that I identified, is really the SLGW interchange. And so currently how cars get onto the SLGW is they have to come into almost North Salt Lake, into the North Yard for Union Pacific. They shove through an area called Grants Tower. They actually go over 4 railroad crossings to be able to then get into the interchange location for SLGW. which is limited to 55 cars. And it's just based on footprint. It's surrounded by communities. There's significant amount of multifamily housing, everything in the area. And with that, essentially the daily capacity of SLGW with the interchange being what it is 55 rail cars per day. And so by relocating that, and there's been plans for that to relocate that interchange, but what essentially that unlocks is you can take in bigger cuts of trains. You're not shoving over public crossings. You're not blocking it for the community. And then you've increased the capacity. So as we grow Northwest Quadrant, those are the kind of things that we're looking at of, okay, what are those barriers? What are those bottlenecks going to be? That would eliminate one of the bottlenecks. So something definitely willing or worth exploring going forward is, how do we help facilitate moving that interchange to get it out of that area where it's currently at? The Cedar City branch is another area that's capacity constrained, and that could be addressed a couple of different ways. The first one you could look at is potentially adding siding capacity there off the Union Pacific Main Line. Currently, when cars go to Cedar City, if they're coming from the Los Angeles area, they actually go about 120 miles out of route to get down to Cedar City. So they actually go to Milford and then go from Milford back down to Cedar City. From Cedar City, when they're emptied or loaded, depending on what they're doing, back to Milford, back to the LA Basin. And so by creating infrastructure there at Lund, what you essentially do is those trains pick up and set out at Lund instead of picking up and setting out at Milford, where the work location is. Lund is directly, it's 30 miles west of Milford, but it's where the branch for Cedar City goes south. And so that's an area I think of opportunity for us to explore kind of in parallel with Union Pacific to really look at what could that potential be. The challenge on the Cedar City branch is there is what they call a runaround track. So since it's a dead end, think about it that way, when they get to the end of the branch line over by the airport in Cedar City, there is a track that they have to run the locomotives around to get back to the other end to go back towards Milford. So essentially the capacity of that branch line is the length of that runaround. And currently with 2 days a week service, it's about 60 rail cars per week. And so by either increasing days of service or changing the options in terms of picking up and setting out at Lund, that significantly changes the capacity, which is also pricing, like we mentioned earlier, for people in Southern Utah to get rail access.
When you say significantly changes, what does that mean?
It
You
means
said 60 rail cars a day, what could
Great.
it?
Per week. And so potentially, so even changing to 5 days a week service could go 200 rail cars per week. So as you look at growing volume and BZI innovation or those type of things, there's going to be a threshold where they're either going to have to build more capacity inside of their facilities. So like when my team built the Savage transload facility 2 years ago, we had to build significantly more infrastructure inside the fence line for that facility because it only was served 2 days a week and because of the capacity constraints. So we ended up spending X amount of dollars additional to be able to have storage capacity for the customers that need the products in there. And so by changing days of week service or adding that capacity, you're no longer having to build that additional infrastructure to service it, and you're able to then bring bigger cuts of trains in and out.
You're gonna have to, at least for me, if you can get us what that Lund, I didn't even know there was a Lund, Utah. So, but what the improvements would need to be. And
Sure.
yeah,
Happy to,
those conversations with Union Pacific.
certainly.
It's a place.
There's nothing in Lund, Utah, except like there's like an old railroad house and there is like some tracks there to pick up and set up cars currently
Oh.
east.
People?
Probably somebody living in that old railroad house, but other than that, it's pretty limited what's infrastructure is in Lund, Utah.
Okay.
Kind of a total divergence here, but about 7 or 8 years ago, the Union Pacific was storing locomotives in Lund. So if you Google Lund on YouTube, they painted a locomotive to look like a dragon, and it was at Lund, Utah. And so that's kind of what comes up there. It's kind of what it's notoriety of Lund. But anyway, so the other thing too is SLGW rail access for the landfill. That's something that Director Hart and I have just preliminary talked about, but it just seems like something that just given GLC, given just the opportunity and footprint there, advanced manufacturing, those types of things, SLGW's investments that they've made to grow their facilities inside of there, it seems like that's a conversation at least worth having to explore what that might look like. Go to the next one.
It's
Sorry.
thinking. No, you're fine.
Talked about CV Spur a little bit. So to grow rail volumes in, there's been a lot of different thoughts, right? So there's Uinta Basin Railroad. How do you get volumes of Uinta crew out of there? There's been a lot of discussion over the years of, exporting coal out of Utah. For increases, any material increases in and out of Wellington, we're going to have to look at increasing what I'm calling siding capacity. So the ability for trains to stage to get in and out of the facilities because it's dual serve with BNSF and Union Pacific. How those trains come in and out of that facility is going to be really critical. So there's not the congestion there and you have trains ready to load. And so if that's a direction that we want to head to start looking at capacity increases there, we're going to really have to start with the sidings and the ability to process traffic in and out of there because it's single main line currently. To be able to handle the additional volume. One of the things that's come up kind of through this analysis and just kind of feedback with people is I think there's a strong appetite for the BNSF intermodal ramp here in Salt Lake. One of the continued feedbacks is I think people would like to see an increased footprint there, so a larger scale facility. And so wherever that might land, but that's something that has come up through this. And so from a congestion perspective on SLGW, but then just from a service offering perspective. And then lastly, kind of multimodal air freight, advanced mobility, manufacturing in Northern Utah. As we've kind of looked at through some of the analysis, there's some really unique characteristics there. And this is specifically kind of in Brigham City to start exploring that more. Did have an initial conversation with Union Pacific. Currently, there's no intermodal service north of Salt Lake City. The way the lanes work, how intermodal traffic, so this is ocean vessel to train or to truck, gets into the valley is from Long Beach, Los Angeles, through Vegas, through Cedar or through Lund, and then up through here. We currently do not have access to what's called the Northwest Seaport Alliance, which is the port authorities of Seattle and Tacoma. And so started preliminary discussions with Union Pacific of what that could potentially look like, is to be able to access those ports. And just like with rail capacity, those ports offer different destinations for shippers out of Utah, different pricing components, and also more flexibility in times of congestion. So when you saw the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach having significant congestion, 2021, 2022, the ports in Seattle and Tacoma fared better. And so creating that additional optionality and capacity, I think could be really interesting. I think there definitely is at some point, a intermodal rail play in Northern Utah to service Cache Valley and, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Lifetime, those type of businesses in the northern part of the state. And so started the kind of initial conversations with Union Pacific to kind of see what their thought process would be. Obviously very preliminary, but I think there is opportunity to kind of mix the unique components there in Brigham City area to grow that out as multimodal hub. One of the things that's come up kind of through this as well, obviously people I think are quite happy with what's going on in Tooele County. Currently the railroad ends west of Sheep Lane, which if those of you that came out to kind of the grand openings and everything else, that's essentially where the groundbreaking was at. So that area there is where the railroad ends. Accessing that property east of Sheep Lane is in the long-term plans of the park, but not currently in the short term or in the next few years plans. That would allow access to rail users outside of just the Lakeview Business Park. There is some sitlo land out there. There's another industrial development out there. So that might be something to consider kind of going forward is, potential incentive to unlock getting across Sheep Lane and then accessing the additional parks out there as the current land kind of fills in. And lastly, the intermodal service to Southern Utah. This is kind of the same vein of conversations that we've had with Union Pacific of just trying to increase intermodal presence in the state. Currently, I would say 95% of the traffic that gets into St. George, Cedar City, gets driven from Long Beach and Los Angeles. There is a small intermodal facility in Las Vegas that's at capacity currently that just mostly services the Las Vegas market. And so as we look to, as the state is expanding, one of the things is trying to understand how to do that. Currently cannot happen the way intermodal works without adding kind of that additional capacity at Lund. So the thought process would be to set intermodal cars out at Lund and then have the local then every day go back and forth. because there's not enough aggregate volume. How railroads look at intermodal lanes is typically 220 containers is the minimum per week, minimum number needed for once a week trains. And so there's not currently 220 containers, needed per week of international business in St. George. Because the way intermodal works is there's domestic service, which is most of the stuff that we get here, and there's international. And international a lot of times goes into sorting facilities just outside of the ports that get converted from a 40-foot container to a 53-foot or 52-foot container, and then gets transported east. And so really looking at that aggregation of volume, there is international volume going into the St. George market today, but it's just not 220 containers per week. So as we kind of talk about that, obviously that gets, trucks off the road, everything else. So it's kind of further discussions that with Union Pacific of what would be the exact requirements needed to bring intermodal service to Southern Utah. And that's kind of what I have today.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? All right,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Armando, just while you're transitioning there, this won't be a question that requires a response, but just a quick statement on this. We're getting invited and have been a part of more state convenings around what other states are doing on this transportation front. Every state's got a Department of Transportation. We've got one of the best here in the state of Utah. They move people better than probably any other state in the country. No other state that we're aware of still has an organization like ours that is responsible for the freight side. That stewardship is so critical for future generations. If we really are going to take trucks off the road, emissions out of the air, provide economic opportunity across the state of Utah, we are really a trailblazing organization across the country with regards to our stewardship for transportation and cargo infrastructure. And so I really appreciate what Armando has put together. I think with what he's thinking, what he's talking about, all of these things, we get singles and doubles. Those are great wins with little small facilities. Every once in a while we get a grand slam, but it's that persistent focus on the movement of cargo that is going to make life better for future generations of Utahns. How do we make sure we've got less emissions in the air? How do we make sure we're getting our goods and services both on the business and the consumer level? All of these things are part of our stewardship for future generations. And I appreciate the opportunity that we have to be proactive in this regard, because I think that's where we can really make a huge difference.
That's super helpful. Let's have those updates quite frequently because that was great to hear the update. All right, let's give some time. Oh, my favorite duo, Mark and Gary. Let's hear about we need a nickname for you two.
Trash guys over here.
Trash guys. I was thinking of other things, but I'm not going to say them on the record.
All right, let's see if we can do this.
I like it.
So while I'm pulling this up here, Mark Nord, Director of Real Estate and Development for Utah Inland Port.
And Gary McEntee with Ninnigood Management.
And before as I'm pulling up this slide deck for Gary and I to talk on, I want to quickly just touch on we've now owned the landfill for a little over 8 months now, and already we've seen and experienced the value of having great, knowledgeable partners. And this is my moment to kind of give Gary and his team some accolades, because as I've worked through this process with them and with DEQ and with Salt Lake City Public Utilities, the amount of knowledge that he and his team have brought have dramatically saved us not only time, but also a lot of money. You've done a great job. You continue to do so, and the amount of just wherewithal that you bring to this group now, having you on the team, has saved us. And we kind of quantified that in the public utilities meeting. Right. Actually, the director of public utilities for Salt Lake City said, by having Gary on the team, I think he's saved the port at least a couple $1 million. So I think you've already paid for yourself a little bit already on that. So
okay, let's
no
more of that.
Enough.
Mark.
Well, I just thought it was a great time to give him that accolade.
Well, let's talk about what we have accomplished. And Mark talked about it. I think the landfill was purchased in February of 25. We started with pre-construction work on the landfill, building access roads, haul roads, putting in SWIP measures, but we really didn't start excavating waste until June of 2025. So we're really That's the time frame that we've been out. Since that time, we've excavated close to 500,000 cubic yards of waste, placed that in the repository. We're about 70 acres of land that's already been excavated and cleaned out. We're running in a good weather month about 100,000 yards per month as far as excavation. Part of that is when we do excavate a cell, a waste cell, we have to do bottom sampling. And in that bottom sampling, we have not had one failure in terms of our analytical testing. So if Mark, you want to pull up the first slide here, we have what the landfill first looked like, if you can pull it up. But that's, so we,
Your help here.
that's okay, I can continue while I work on that. The other aspect of that is, as we are excavating the cells, we run into leachate. So that's the water that's percolated into the cell, at the bottom of the cell. We brought a interesting technology to the site. So the graphic up here now is what the landfill looked like back in February of this year when the port bought it. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a color coded of all the cells that we're working on. So the cells that are in yellow have all been excavated out already. The green is cells that are being worked on, and the purple is the original Bonneville pile that was material that was placed on the site from SLR before, and the light purple is the area that we've extended that repository. So going back again, we've done about 70 acres of cells that we've done. Part of this also is to extract the leachate, and we've extracted out of the cells about 1 million gallons of leachate. Almost 750 have been evaporated with the technology that I think many of you saw before, which is an evaporative technology, which works very well in this type of climate. Is that the technology that we're going to be able to use across the entire site? I don't know if we're going to have the capacity, but it'll continue to be part of how we deal with our leachate. One of the benefits that we have right now is we've had a very mild winter, and we continue to work into winter. And I don't, all those in the construction business know winter in Utah can come anywhere from October 1st to January 1st. So we've been very fortunate on that. That doesn't mean that we haven't had challenges. We've had quite a bit of challenges on the site as we've worked through it, from accessing materials for liner materials and things like that, tarps to cover the repository, as well as dust control issues. We're on a strict requirement on dust control with DEQ. So we've had to shut the site down in the middle of summer at least 2 or 3 times because we've had ongoing dust. We've accommodated that with a lot of use of water to keep the dust down, and then another innovative approach that we work with DEQ on, where we've actually used some of the leachate as dust control measures on existing cells that were going to be removed. One of the things that Mark talked about and Ben has talked about is we have an ongoing standing meeting every Monday with DEQ. So they're on our site every Monday for a Monday meeting. More than likely, it's twice a week because we do some split samplings with some of the staff members of DEQ. So we have DEQ on our site twice a week, coming out, meetings, inspections, working together. We have done a good job with them in looking at things that were originally in the RAP that we need to make modifications on. So we've worked well with them. We've always also instituted a 90-day review meeting with management from the inland port and management from UDEC to sit down and not only talk about what our progress is, but what are the upcoming items that are critical to us moving this thing forward. So if you jump ahead a little bit here, our project schedule is showing that we'll have all the excavation and backfilling done by the fall of next year for phase 1. What we have to do after that is actually go and cap the repository. That will probably be done the following spring. So we have some decisions we have to make on that cap. What I want to give you a sense here is just what we talk about in terms of waste excavation. This is a graphic or photo of digging on cell 199. Cell 199 is one of the deeper cells within phase 1. It was probably 10 feet deep. We had quite a bit of leachate. We had quite a bit of groundwater that was seeping in. So this is one of the areas that I mentioned before. It wasn't without our challenges, but that has now been completed, and all that waste and all that material has been put into repository.
If I can jump in here.
Please.
Cell 199 is a good barometer for us to assess as we move forward into phase 2 and 3, kind of more of what we're going to be facing. In phase 1, we were in our most shallow and less complex area of the landfill. So as we start to integrate into the other phases, it's going to get deeper and a lot more complex with the type of waste we're dealing with as well as the depth. So this was really, I think phase 1 was a great way for us to cut our teeth and really understand what we're getting into. But now, as Gary mentioned, we're starting to hit depths where it's going to take operators a little bit more technical skills, being able to get down in those depths and pull it. It's going to get more complex, but it was a great learning curve in phase 1 for us to kind of go, okay, now we kind of have our heads wrapped around how we're going to do this.
And I think part of that was always our conversation with DEQ in taking this remedial action plan in phases. We wanted to be able to learn from first phase to be apply what we learn in the field to subsequent phases. So this is definitely something that us and DEQ were able to get our heads around, figure out how to best attack it in terms of collecting the leachate, pumping the cell ahead of time to minimize the amount of wet waste we picked up. Once we excavate the waste, then we've got to haul it. We haul these haul trucks. So if you've gone by the landfill, there's somewhere between 10 and 11 haul trucks operating on a daily basis. Here's the haul roads. As I mentioned before, prior to starting the excavation, we had to construct roads across the site to be able to haul not only the waste material, but also the backfill. Subsequently, we had the benefit of being able to secure some clean fill from off-site sources, and we've brought that in as backfill, because over the course of the project, we will need additional backfill to bring the elevation of the site up. As I mentioned before, we've worked with the repository. Eventually, the repository will be about 40 acres. You might be able to see in the slide, maybe you can't see it, but this is not a typical landfill. You don't have a lot of plastic. You don't have a lot of refuse organic material. What we're really dealing with in phase 1 is more of a compost. This is waste that was put into the landfill in the 1960s, and it's been out there for 50 to 60 years. So we've benefited from that in 2 ways. One, we don't have any vectors. There's no odor. There's no birds on the waste, and it compacts quite a bit. So we've got some compaction on here, probably a little bit more than we had originally anticipated. Okay. And you can see here now, a little bit close up, you can see there's bits of debris in there, but it's not your typical landfill. Like if you would go to Salt Lake County landfill, you would see a much more household waste type scenario. Okay. As I mentioned before, we've done over 70 confirmation sampling on the base of each of these cells. So what we agreed with DEQ to do, on each cell, we sample within 300 feet. So as we excavate our cell, each 300 feet, we take a cell sample. And what we're identifying there is making sure that the material we're taking out of the cell, the soil below it, is in fact, is not problematic for us in terms of contamination. So we have actually 3 inspectors on site that look for asbestos material and also do all of our confirmation sampling. And to date, we have not yet had a failure. So that's really a credit to the people doing the excavation, because they're getting that material out. As I mentioned before, we're using a technology, it's a leachate evaporator. It's worked extremely well. We've processed through out of the cells over 1 million gallons and we've evaporated over 750,000 gallons. This is give you a sense of where we are with backfilling. You can see some of the developments to the west, the Siegfried properties in the foreground. That's cell 199 is partially backfilled. Just north of that, you're seeing cells that have been excavated but have not been backfilled yet. Okay. And there's a close-up view here. One of the interesting things, if you see, it looks like a little beige area there. That's actually water bladders. So when we had that big rainstorm that occurred in Salt Lake City some months ago, we collected that clean rainwater and put it into these baffles so that we can use it a subsequent period of time and not be using city water for doing our dust control.
Yeah. we were able to get some good drone footage that I'll run. This is while we're talking here and asking for any questions, but something of note, as Gary mentioned, our remediation schedule is it's on as planned, but it's also different from our development schedule. And something that we brought up, this doesn't mean that at the end of next summer that the phase 1 is going to be available for development. We still have to pull in utilities and do improvements, but for the remediation and preparation of that, we will have that on track to be completed for the end of next year or next summer.
While this slide is going forward, you can see the cells to the north. You see the undulations in that. Those are the waste cells to the north. So you can see the real difference between phase 1 and phase 2. But picking up what Mark just said, one of the reasons why we decided that we would try to work through the winter, we've been very fortunate with the weather, is we want to be able to complete the remediation and backfilling by September, October of next year, which would allow for the beginning of doing infrastructure construction. So we've met with DEQ. We have an agreement with them that they'll allow us to do that, even though we haven't capped the repository. And we met with Salt Lake City Public Utilities and provide them our schedule. And as far as the most recent conversations, we're on pace with that as far as doing the platting and being able to get infrastructure construction approval by next fall of 2026.
So, turn that over to you, Madam Chair, with any questions.
Any questions? Yes, what number are you on? 8. There you go. Oh, Victoria.
This is amazing and really exciting to see. Does this eliminate the need for future vapor barriers when we construct?
No. One of the things that we'll have on this site is we're going to have what they call a site management plan, and you'll have what's called reasonable steps, enforceable reasonable steps. So because of that, you have soil that has had underneath this waste for that amount of time, you will have, good practice will be to put vapor barriers underneath the buildings. It's not a large
Explain
cost.
what a vapor barrier is.
So a
for
vapor
those.
barrier is basically, kind of think of it as a sheet of plastic that would go in your building pad. What that does is prevents any soil gas from migrating into buildings. We have done soil gas testing, that we just did a new round of groundwater sampling. We do not have a significant amount of soil gas, but as a precautionary measure, as from DEQ standpoint, they would want to have, as part of the site management plan, a requirement that we put vapor barriers under the buildings.
And then this level of remediation, while I know we're going for commercialized, more industrialized uses, will this allow us to have things like food preparation capacity on site and all of that?
That's not a problem.
Okay.
The only restriction we'd have is a residential, and that really comes from the access to the soil. Again, we're cleaning this up to a residential level, industrial level. But again, all of our soil testing we are well below our project screening levels. So this site has benefited from having a kind of a lakeland clay underneath it. So there's a really kind of fortuitous benefit that the city cited it here. So we're getting the benefit of that when we clean it up.
Thank you. I mean, thank you as a West Side resident. Thank you. This is remarkable. I hope you get interrupted, because if we don't have a massive snow impact soon, the dust is the least of your worries next summer.
No, the
So
summer-
I hope you have nothing
The
to
summer
report in the
dust was
next meeting.
difficult, yes.
So-
But I thought we did a good job, and I think DEQ did a good job. But again, there were a couple occasions where we had those high winds in the summer, and we basically had moon dust on the first part of this landfill, and we would shut the site down so we wouldn't have those opacity problems.
Councilwoman, I share your desire. We need some more snow. Let's get the snow
Yeah,
there.
like the
I'll
entire
tell
state
Gary
needs to be
just
incapacitated for a minute.
Take off for a couple weeks. Let's get some snow.
Taking off for a couple of weeks sounds good.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I think
Appreciate it.
Joel has a question from wherever Joel is.
From a remote location, my office. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person. I had a really busy schedule today, but I just wanted to, Gary, your team, just wanted to say you guys have been doing an incredible job. Thank you for the work you're doing here. It's amazing. It's not only is ahead of schedule, but it's done in look at the video and the showing the work that you're doing. You can see the size and scope of the project. It's absolutely incredible. So I just wanted to express my appreciation from you know, when the board looked at originally taking on this project, some of those large concerns were associated with impacts of groundwater to Great Salt Lake, and you guys are you're stepping in and actually doing it. So it's not just a risk that's looming out there. We're remediating and identifying and fixing that risk. So from my perspective and from the Department of Natural Resources, thank you for doing this and being such good stewards. It really makes a difference.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Yeah, just before we go on, Gary, I just want you to know, I had opportunity to meet you way early in this process
You did.
and get to know you. Actually, I knew that you were the guy that should have been doing this from the very beginning. Our problem was at that time, we weren't sure what we were going to do. So, but you've been a good partner through this, and it's been a real pleasure to work with you.
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with the board as well. And look, there's a lot of people that are responsible for this work out on the site every day. So kudos to them as well.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate everything. All right, let's turn some time over to Amy for board policies. Some reviews, some I think we have to take action on. You're on 18, okay.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I know this is just as exciting as talking about the landfill updates as well as the rail updates. But as we just to set expectations on this, which is the first policy, we do bring any of these board policies up for an annual review. And at this time, the board policy review, we have no changes since the last time it was presented. With the procurement policy, which is BPO 7, we have not made any changes since last time, but to encompass what has been changed is we did add a section on procurement exceptions and then just corrected some minor formatting on that. So we will be seeking board approval for this new revision 3.2. Since the last presentation, we have made a very, very small update to our whistleblower policy. The intent behind this whistleblower policy is to provide the ability for staff, for board, and other reported entities to be able to report either anonymously or non-anonymously. And one of the things that we have found is we're moving away more from state tools is that we have reached out and gotten an independent industry standard tool, which is with NAVX. We did go and get several bids, and this tool will allow for that anonymous reporting. So what we have done is updated this to reflect the URL and the phone number that we would ask people to use from there on out. Everything else would stay the same. And then for BPO 9, which is our internal control program, we just made another very minor update. We have formalized into more of 3, rather than having the 10 risk pillars, 3 high-level risk pillars of operational risk that Ariane oversees. That includes our financials, our InfoSec, vendor, and HR people risks. Still maintaining like the legal and compliance risk pillar that I oversee. And then we have that strategic risk pillar that includes the reputational and external risks that Executive Director Ben Hart oversees. So that's only the minor changes. I will pause for any questions that the board may have at this time.
I don't see any, Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think the next one is yours too, the resolution 50.
Correct. As we have been working with, we have just a minor adjustment that was needed to be made to this interlocal agreement that we had related to the approval of the BZI number 1 PID. Just a question from them that was raised on striking out this outstanding loans section since they didn't have any direct loans with us through this. So we wanted to bring this because of the Interlocal Agreement Act and what is under it, just to bring it back for board approval so that we can reconsider this and move it forward.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Amy. Stephanie, let's go to you.
Good morning, Board. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here to speak on the creation of Tooele Valley Public Infrastructure District number 2. This is a mirroring public infrastructure district to the existing TV PID. And we are going to have it cover the new areas that have been added to the project area. So the amendment that we had earlier this year, that will be the area that will encompass TV PID 2. The purpose of this PID will be to add additional infrastructure needed for that second phase, including roadway extensions, grading and subgrade preparation, utility extensions, fiber build out, and construction of some crossings and access points. Standard infrastructure upgrades that are applicable to these PIDs. We are excited that this PID will include tax differential as well as a mill levy to increase the bonding capacity. We're excited about the opportunities that this PID will be responsible for in building out the infrastructure needed for this second phase. In discussing the necessity of a second PID, it became very clear from our bond counsel and legal teams that a second PID is really going to be beneficial for the bond issuances coming up. We're happy that the existing PID had a successful bond issuance earlier this year, and we look forward to the opportunities that that will bring as well. We have I learned yesterday that they are actually going to be changing the name of the PID. It won't be called TV PID 2. This will help facilitate some differentiation for that future bond issuance. We will make the board aware of that new naming convention in our next presentation. So no board action is required today. This is our first presentation of the proposal for TV PID 2. Any questions?
I don't see any, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jenna. You got a couple, so get
Yeah.
comfortable.
And I'm actually going to combine the first two because we're triggering the same parcel that we're doing the incentive on.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one is Industrial Injection. They are a company that is moving into Richfield, Utah. Sorry. They currently have a facility up here in Salt Lake and they feel like they are being pushed out. They are outgrowing their building, and South Salt Lake is highly encouraging reduction in manufacturing facilities. So they started looking elsewhere. They found an existing building down in Richfield, and we made a pretty aggressive play to get them to move down there. They are going to bring $10 million investment initially with 110 jobs, and that will increase to over 200 jobs by the time they get done with their full expansion and build out. They're thinking probably within the next 3 to 5 years. They need to do a lot of improvements to the existing infrastructure in that building in order to make it work with their operations. But they are also going to be working with Snow College to train their students and create that workforce pipeline. They're going to be offering a lot of internships as well as jobs upon graduation. So they've already done some outreach to the local high schools and the college students, and they have had a lot of applications. They're currently taking applications, hoping to get their certificate of occupancy by the end of the year, which came as kind of a surprise. We thought it was going to be next year, which is why we're trying to push this through in these last minute meetings. This project hits a lot of UIPA and the community objectives, creating the high quality jobs and enabling these families in the rural areas to flourish and be able to stay in the more rural areas if they choose to do so. This was presented to the Tax Differential Committee on December 3rd. They approved it unanimously to both the trigger and the incentive, and just got a motion there for you guys to look over and consider when the time comes.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yep.
Awesome opportunity for Richfield.
Yeah, it'll be great. I'm very excited. They actually have 2 of my sons-in-law down there, so. Next one I've got, we're doing an amendment to Pony Express, and we created this project area very recently. So recently, we do not have branding for it yet. That should be finalized this week or next. But Payson City came to us and asked to be included. So we're amending them into the Pony Express project area. We're going to add about 716 acres to the project area boundary. That's all within Payson City. They want to focus on manufacturing, life sciences, and advanced manufacturing. They know that they are growing like crazy, and they would like some help and some assistance to make sure that growth is managed well and the infrastructure is built out, and they are able to get in the kind of companies that will add to the community instead of just take advantage of that growth that's coming. So they've asked us to partner with them and help with that. This amendment was presented to the Tax Differential Committee on October 29th and received a unanimous favorable decision. This is the first presentation, so we're not asking for any board action at this time, just making you aware that Payson City would like to be part of the Inland Port family. And then my last one is the second presentation for the Skyline Corridor Amendment. We did the first presentation last month just to kind of reiterate those highlights. We're adding some land in Ephraim Crossing that was inadvertently missed in the first time when we created the project area. We found about 4 parcels that they own that were not included in the original creation. And then both Gunnison City and Wayne County would like to include area where they have current businesses that are expanding. Gunnison City has a couple of manufacturers that have purchased land, and they were originally going to do townhomes, and now they're going to do warehousing and manufacturing space there as well. So they decided to include it in the project area. And then Wayne County has had some issues with the industrial park that they originally put in on the creation of Skyline Corridor. So they're going to start with a little bit smaller area that currently has utilities there and let some of the current businesses expand at that point. And then once that kind of gets up and going and we get some differential flowing in that area, we can build out the larger infrastructure down by the airport. Which is more what they were originally planning on doing. So we're adding about 250 acres to this one. There's some maps, just a couple parcels in Ephraim City. There's quite a bit in Gunnison because they are also including some Sitla land. We're partnering with Sitla on expanding their industrial park, and Sitla would like our help to do some marketing and be able to build out that infrastructure. And then the 44 acres in Wayne County as well. This amendment was presented to the Tax Differential Committee in October and was also received a unanimous favorable recommendation. And so it'll be up to the board's consideration to pass that today, as this is the second presentation.
Thanks, Jenna. Appreciate that. All righty, let's go to public comment. We haven't received anybody in the room. Is there anyone online that would like to be recognized and make any public comment? Okay, let's start with Terry. You want to unmute yourself, Terry, and begin?
Yes, my name is Terry Durfee, and I'm a lifelong resident of Tulla County. I'm here today to voice strong opposition to the continued push for inland ports in Utah. Quite simply, we do not have the water resources to support them. On paper, our state may claim certain water rights, but those rights do not match the physical reality. Our rivers are stressed, our aquifers are declining, and this year's water supply is already dangerously low. Before approving large-scale industrial developments, we need a comprehensive science-based water analysis that honestly reflects what is available, not what we wish were available. These decisions have real ecological consequences. The wetlands surrounding the Great Salt Lake, one of the most important migratory bird habitats in the Western Hemisphere, are already shrinking. Species of birds and other wildlife that rely on those wetlands are not being fully accounted for in these plans. With the Great Salt Lake sitting at historically low levels, even small changes in water use can compound into irreversible harm. This isn't just a local problem around the world. Regions with similar patterns of over-allocation and mismanagement. Iran is a clear example are facing water crises so severe that communities are literally running out of drinkable water. Utah is not immune to that future if we continue to approve massive water-intensive projects without honest assessments. And now proposals to establish a second public infrastructure district in Tooele Valley raise even more red flags. This is development on credit, debt, and obligations that future generations will be forced to pay for with water they may not even have. By moving forward without fully understanding the impacts, we risk selling out the very people who will inherit this community. We cannot build our way out of a shrinking water problem. Until we have real data, real accountability, and real preservation strategies, inland ports are not responsible or sustainable for Utah's future. And I also want to mention that there already was a plan, including Gary, for the
Thanks, Terry.
landfill. Thanks.
All right, let's move on. Ms. Pappas. Katie.
Thank you. My name's Katie Pappas and I live in Salt Lake City. As circumstances change and new information comes to light, we have a responsibility to adapt, change our plans, and reassess. UIPA shares that responsibility. Some opportunities for review follow. Recent federal cuts to community funding, special projects, and public assistance have threatened future resources and well-being. Giving 75% of future property tax revenue to developers in UIPA project areas has become even less tenable. As the West aquifers shrink and surface water supplies diminish, we cannot afford to use this precious resource for economic development without understanding the long-term consequences. Community water needs must be prioritized. You can't drink money. Our understanding of the importance and presence of vulnerable wetlands, wildlife, plants, and birds impacted by development is constantly improving. UIPA's environmental assessments, based on old information, need to be updated.
Katie, it looks like we lost you. You can submit the rest of your comments online. Let's go to Mr. McAtee, Pat.
There we go. Hello. Hi, my name is Patrick McAtee. I'm also a lifelong resident of Tooele County, and I just have a few concerns regarding these sites. So regarding the Tooele Valley Zenith Bolinder project, you guys explicitly proposed a bridge to span across the critical wetlands out there. I've visited the site. There is no bridge. There is 2 roads that span across it. This effectively dams off the entire ecosystem and drainage valleys from the Warm Springs Slough and several natural springs up in the Grantsville area. And then upon checking the latest proposal for the site, it appears that that bridge proposal has just been completely removed. Regarding the 20 wells and Broken Arrow sites, you guys justified these projects by claiming you consulted with DWR and determined that there were 0 plants or animals, according to page 51 and 52 of your report within the project area. You guys cited an outdated online program, which specifically states not for consultation, to bypass getting an actual consultation, which you knew a real survey would fail you. I took the liberty of consulting with DWR myself, as well as compiled a bunch of crowdsourced data from eBird and iNaturalist. There are over 200 species around these sites, with almost half being on conservation lists. You know, as Ms. Durfee just mentioned, you know, Tooele's aquifer system is already at capacity, and these critical wetlands along the shore of the Great Salt Lake rely on the annual discharge from that. There's also a trichloroethylene plume just slightly south of your guys' site there at the 20 wells area, which is a highly toxic carcinogenic environmental disaster that's down in the aquifer. And any kind of depletion of the aquifers out here that could result in, you know, subsidence similar to what happened down there in Cedar City could have absolutely catastrophic consequences out here. It seems like you guys have kind of moved beyond negligence to active deception at this point. You're holding this conference and refuse to actually take the questions because you know these actions are indefensible. We don't really need to have you guys hear our concerns. We need to know and have an explanation as to why Tooele's ecology and hydrology deserves to be destroyed in this way and why it's okay to falsify these environmental impact assessments.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. All right, that looks like we're through public comment. We're going to move on to the policy updates that Amy went through. We're going to start with BP07, that the procurement policy that she went through last time and then again this time with minimal changes. If I can get a motion to that policy change.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. And a second. Tyler, I see you're trying to unmute yourself. There we go. Can you try that again? We barely heard you.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Yes.
Any opposed? All right, let's move on to BP08, the whistleblower, going to outsource some of that information with procurement, we already did procurement, BP07, yep. Can I get a motion on the whistleblower policy?
Happy to make that motion.
Thanks, Jonathan. And a second? Tyler?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Yes.
Passes unanimously. All right, let's go to BP09, the internal control program. I'll take a motion and a second on that one as well.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Tyler.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jonathan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. All right, the resolution 2550 that Jenna talked about with the BZI PID, no, excuse me, Stephanie talked about with the BZI PID. Ben, will you read that resolution?
Yes, this motion would be to adopt Resolution 2025-50, reconsideration of resolution creating BZI Public Infrastructure District.
All right, any discussion to that, to the resolution? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-50?
I'll make a motion to adopt 2025-50.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that.
All favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All right, let's go on to the business incentive for the Richfield project that Jenna talks about, industrial injection. Larry, it looks like you're reading that motion, or is Ben? Oh, it's on the screen. You want to read that, Jonathan?
Sure.
Go right
I
ahead.
move to approve the proposal of the Utah Inland Port Authority Board awarding industrial injection an annual property tax differential rebate equivalent to 20% of the differential received for the first 6 years following receipt of a certificate of occupancy and 15% for an additional 15 years. This rebate will be provided yearly for no more than 21 years, provided continued operation within the project area during that time.
And obviously this, as well as all of our other incentives, goes through an incentive committee before it comes to the board, was passed unanimously. So it is with us. Is there any discussion to the proposed motion in front of us? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Or is that a second?
Oh, that's a second. I'm sorry. You proposed the motion. A second, Tyler, sorry.
I'll make that.
All right, all those in favor of the proposed motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
And passes unanimously. All right, let's move on to the resolution 2025-51, the Skyline Corridor Project Area. Ben, if you'll read that.
This motion would be to adopt Resolution 2025. I've got 52, Madam Chair. Skyline Corridor.
51, 52, there's two of them.
Okay. 51 for the trigger resolution for the Skyline Corridor project area resolution setting trigger date for the first collection of tax increment funds.
All right, any a motion to adopt resolution 2025-51.
I move to adopt.
Thank you, Jonathan. And a second? Tyler?
Sorry, I didn't want to take all the seconds, but
Very good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
yes.
That motion passes unanimously. All right, let's move on to the last one, the resolution 2025-52. Ben, if you'll read that.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, if I could, right before I say this, I just want to give a huge shout out to Jenna. She drove up from Richfield this morning to present to us. She did an amazing job. She does a ton for the port, and I just want to thank her publicly for all her efforts. This motion would be Resolution 2025-52, Amendment Number 2 to Skyline Corridor Project Area Plan and Budget.
I'll look for a motion to adopt resolution 25-52.
Make that motion.
Thanks, Tyler. And a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. I'm going to give Jonathan the adjourn motion.
I move to adjourn. Thank
That
you
is
so much.
non-debatable. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.